Just behind losing a child, there may be no greater pain for a parent than to know that your child has been sexually abused. And adults who commit such emotionally charged crimes can be sentenced to long prison terms, and they must register as sex offenders.
But for juvenile sex offenders, it's a different story. Their records are often sealed, and once they're released from a juvenile facility, they don't have to register as a sex offender. And almost no one knows what they've done. Tonight, we're on your side with the story of a Valley woman who's determined to change that. We're concealing her identity to protect her daughter.
I started pounding on the door.
Come out of there! Come out of there! Come
And he opened the door and ran right past me and locked himself in the bathroom.
It was 5 years ago when Lucy's daughter was abused by a relative.
He was my ex-husband's cousin.
The impact on her daughter tore the family apart.
She had night terrors for 6 months afterwards. She would wake up, and I mean, I've just never seen my child this way, so it broke my heart.
Lucy learned that her daughter's abuser, despite failing all attempts at rehabilitation at juvenile corrections, was automatically released at age 21 with no requirement to sign up for the sex offender registry. And now, about a year later, he stands accused once again of molesting a young girl.
If you're not going to try and change, then we just shouldn't let you go. I mean, if you're not going to change, you're not going to rehabilitate, you're not going to take accountability for your actions, why should you ever be out on the streets to do it again?
Potentially, they could be working at a daycare, right?
Absolutely.
Former prosecutor Virginia Bond says every case is different, and it's up to the prosecutors to decide if a juvenile sex offender's records should be made public.
So it's case by case.
It is.
And it's a judgment call when it comes right down to it.
It is.
Prosecutors will charge a juvenile as an adult if conditions warrant. The case of Trevor Reisenstein is one such case. In 2009, he was convicted of a brutal sexual attack on a young girl, and he was just 12 years old at the time. But because he was the child of a drug user and had almost no parental guidance with serious mental issues, he was deemed a high risk to reoffend. But Lucy says in too many other cases where the prosecution thinks a juvenile can be rehabilitated, they turn out to be wrong, and innocent children pay the price.
Is there a better way to do this?
The only way it could be better is if we had more resources.
Bond says there are not enough tools for juvenile corrections to help many offenders. But regardless of resources, Lucy says any juvenile sex offender who doesn't successfully complete a rehab program should have to register as a sex offender when they get out.
When the legislature comes back into session, we're going to present a bill. Something needs to be changed. So many of these child molesters reoffend and reoffend and reoffend, and at what point do we say enough is enough?
That's the question. Well, Bond says it's important to remember that juvenile sex offenders have almost always experienced abuse themselves.
Sure.
You know, it is a vicious cycle, but that doesn't make it any easier for parents whose children are violated to forgive an offender or allow offenders to be released without other parents knowing what they did.
So, Roland, do we even know how many juveniles are even tried as adults? It seems so rare. We hardly ever report on it in the media.
That's what I thought as well, and I asked Virginia Bond about that. She said when she was a prosecutor, you could see up to 7 or 8 cases a month where it was being considered. The actual number then much lower than that, but they do consider it quite frequently.
Okay.